Welcome back, everyone. It's that time of year again where we start to make predictions about next year. You're going to see a lot of prediction videos about 2023, but I wanted to do something a bit different in this video. I wanted to look back 1 year ago at a video I made and the predictions that I made and do a follow-up. That's right. The end of last year, I did a video with 10 different predictions about 2022. Now that we're coming to the tail end of 2022, I want to do a follow-up on this video. I want to give you my thoughts and analysis and look back on some of the crazy correct and crazy incorrect predictions I made. It's interesting to look back on this. It gives you a little insight into how difficult it is to predict the future. Hindsight is 2020, and so much has happened over 2022. This has been such a crazy year that to go back to this time capsule and to be able to see where my mind was and where most investors were at that time, I think is very interesting. So in this video, we'll be reviewing my 2022 predictions from a year ago. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, the first thing that I do in this video is I give a big disclaimer about copying my Story Fund portfolio. The Story Fund is my growth portfolio, and it's just been hammered this year. It's really been crushed. Basically, every company that I've invested in, almost every one of them, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, you name it. All of them are going down. We have a couple outliers here with Berkshire Hathaway and Apple. So Apple's propping up parts of the portfolio, but everything else is deep in the red. This has not been performing well. Now, the interesting thing is, in my prediction video for 2022, I realized ahead of time that this portfolio would be very volatile. Listen to the warning and the big disclaimer I give about people potentially copying the Story Fund. And at the time of this video, when I was giving this warning, the Story Fund was in the green. It was performing well. We were in the green by around $14,000. With that said, I want to give a warning here. A little bit of a warning to not copy this portfolio. Having so much of it tied to a couple companies like Google and Netflix really does increase the concentration. It makes it so the portfolio is going to be more volatile. It'll trade differently from the major indices, and you might feel like you're underperforming. And this causes people that don't have the same level of conviction to sell out at very bad times. When the portfolio trades down or Netflix has a bad quarter and it seems really negative, you might sell out at a loss. So I'd actually recommend to not copy this portfolio. It is unlikely you've done the same research, you have the same conviction level, and you like these companies the same way that I do, or see the future the same way that I do. And unless you do, it's probably a bad bet to try to mimic the portfolio. I think in most cases, for most people, if you want exposure to high growth tech companies, you can just buy a tech market cap weighted ETF like the QQQ or SCHG or many of the other ones. That's the warning that I give. And of course, I think that's worked out to be a good warning because the Story Fund has not done well this year and it has been very volatile. Now let's go ahead and jump into the first prediction here. Number one prediction for 2022, COVID will end. And I know that technically it might not end. Technically there will be cases, but I think for all intents and purposes, in terms of mind share and actual damage that it's causing and shutting down society and regulations, I think most of that's going to be over by the second half of 2022. There's a couple reasons why. First of all, the new Omicron variant, from all the data we have so far, it's less severe. It is milder than the Delta variant, and it's spreading rapidly. When it spreads rapidly and it's milder, I think that will make it go through society quicker. And without another variant or even more variants afterwards, I think that people have moved on from it. I think people are tired of talking about COVID. I think businesses are tired of doing regulations centered around COVID. I think in general, society's ready to move on, and the data shows that we might be able to move on very quickly. That's prediction number one. And keep in mind, this video that I'm reacting to, was filmed December of 2021. COVID was still at the top of everyone's mind. That was the big thing we talked about on a daily basis. So I consider my prediction here correct. I think most people have moved on from COVID. Yes, the virus is still around, but overall as a society, it's not the top of mind. It's not the thing everyone's focused on all the time. Let's go ahead and move on to prediction number two. Now, my second prediction goes kind of along with the first one. It is related. I think that restaurants in general across the US will have record dine-in numbers. Meaning I think that the amount of people that are dining into restaurants will be higher in 2022 than it was in 2019 or 2020 or 2021. I think it will surpass any of those years. We already see that a lot of restaurants are getting more demand, and this is something that we can see across the industry. Omicron has set this back a little bit, but again, I think Omicron will be short-lived because of how quickly it's spreading and how it seems to be less severe. So I think that coming into the second half of 2022, we'll see a lot of people wanting to get out of the house There's already an uptick in demand for services, and restaurants are part of that experience. So the second prediction is simply that restaurants, dine-in restaurants, will have record sales. I thought that food businesses would do really well in 2022. Back in 2021, they were starting to reopen, they're starting to get business, but I could see all this demand pent up for a sit-down restaurant experience without dealing with all the COVID restrictions. Now, this is another prediction that I think I nailed. I think I got this one correct. We have restaurants like Texas Roadhouse that's up 8% year to date. It's outperforming the entire market. In the green this year, it has a record high revenue. This is the highest it's ever been in its history. And even on a per restaurant basis, this is the highest sales it's ever had. Average weekly sales at our company's restaurants were $129,278. That is per week. This is the highest of any time ever in Texas Roadhouse's history. This is also a prediction that I felt so strongly about that most of my invested capital in all of 2022 went into restaurants. I put $39,000 into Texas Roadhouse, $32,000 into Starbucks. That's almost the size of my entire story fund just in these two companies in my dividend portfolio. And again, it was the conviction of believing that people wanted to get back to the restaurant experience, getting back to getting their Starbucks in the morning. I thought that COVID was going to end. People wanted to get back to routines, and I put my money behind it with these two companies. So these have been two of the best performing positions in my portfolio this year. And this is another one that I think I got correct. So maybe the predictions are going to be right. We have 2 out of 2 so far. Let's go ahead and move on to prediction number 3. Prediction number 3, software companies will make a comeback. We know the recent beatdown that a lot of the smaller software tech companies have had recently. This is hard to watch. It's hard to watch. I wish I could go back and warn myself. I wish I could go back time and just slap some sense into myself back then. We're talking about software companies here, and I'm going on about them making a comeback in 2022. We got to listen to it. Let's just keep listening. Many of them are down like 50% plus from their all-time highs. So they've really had their valuations chopped in half or even down 75%. A lot of companies have sold off like crazy, but these companies are still valuable. Many of them are still growing 40% revenues year over year. And it is true that their valuation did get a bit ahead of itself. Many of them traded up to astronomically high prices, but they've now sort of been reset, I think, down to safer valuations. I look at this and I think of the Peter Lynch phrase, it's always darkest before pitch black. It is true what I'm saying there, and I think the overall thesis is sound. Basically, in 2021, a lot of the software companies went down 50 to even 70% in value, and I thought that they've been chopped down in valuation so much that going into 2022, we might see a reprisal of them. We might see them have a little bit of a boost, but that didn't happen. They just kept going down. Interest rates kept going up. Software companies kept going down. And this prediction is entirely wrong. Let's look at the actual numbers here. We have the S&P 500, which is the dark blue line. And then we have the iShares Expanded Software ETF. And then we have the Wisdom Tree Cloud Computing ETF. These are different software companies, and we're benchmarking it against the S&P 500 this year. The cloud computing companies are down 52% year to date, just 2022. The software companies are down 35% year to date. And the overall market's down 17%. So no, we didn't see a comeback in software companies. Now it's time to move on to prediction number 4. This one is regarding one of my biggest holdings, which is Netflix. Prediction number 4, Netflix will continue their lead in the streaming wars, and they'll end 2022 with the most subscribers of any streaming service. And despite the best efforts of Warner Media and Discovery and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, it'll become more abundantly clear that Netflix is the runaway winner in this category. All right, so my prediction was that in 2022, Netflix would end the year with the most streaming subscribers of any service, and it would become abundantly clear to investors that Netflix is the runaway winner. Now, this one is a little bit more subjective. Netflix did end the year with the most subscribers by far. They have 223 million subscribers as of their recent earnings report. We have the next closest, which is Disney Plus, and they're only at 164 million. So they're gaining on Netflix quickly, but Netflix still has quite a lead. They have a pretty good margin lead in subscriber numbers. They're also leading in the amount of ARPU, the average revenue per user per subscriber. So Netflix ended the year with the most subscribers, but then we have the question of whether or not it's becoming abundantly clear that they're the overall streaming winner. There's different opinions on this. We have people like Barry Diller that say that Netflix won.
What about Netflix?
Netflix won. Get over it.
He just says that they won. It's over. The battle's over. They won streaming. We have people like Tom Rogers saying the exact same thing, that Netflix already won. In my opinion, I'm already convinced that Netflix won. I think they have this whole streaming war in the bag. I think it's just how big of a streaming sphere that they can grow into. In terms of actual profit and losses, Netflix has such a better situation than any other direct-to-consumer company. All these other streaming players are losing massive amounts of money every single quarter on their streaming services. Netflix is the only one that's profitable, and they're the only one that's free cash flow positive. So out of all these companies, I think whether you look at the subscriber numbers, I think whether or not you look at the average revenue per user, I think when you look at the growth rates, the cash flows, or profitability, I still believe that Netflix has won. So on this prediction, I'll give myself a 50-50. I think we got 2 right, 1 wrong, and I think this one is a sort of right. We have a lot of doubting in Netflix, but they did end the year with the most subscribers, so I'll do this one as a 50-50. Let's move on to the next prediction here, and this one regards the labor market. The labor market that's super tight right now, I think eventually a lot of people are going to be returning back to work in 2022, specifically the second half of it, because I believe a lot of people are running slim on their savings, and it's only a matter of time until they'll be pressured financially to seek work. We can look at what happened in 2020. We had record levels of savings. This was a combination of people being scared, and when people are scared, they naturally save more money. And we also gave out record stimulus. So everybody was getting checks deposited into their checking accounts. And this happened twice. You can see the 2 rounds of stimulus here. The savings rate was through the roof. Well, all this additional stimulus, freezing student loan payments, the enhanced unemployment benefits, as all these things come trickling to an end, people's savings are going to be slimmed down. And when that happens, I believe that many of these people will return back to work. So I predicted that the labor market would loosen up a little bit as more people return back to work, and I would say that this one's mostly correct. We're not only seeing a lot of people return back to work, but we're actually starting to see layoffs, people getting fired left and right from different tech companies. So I think this one's mostly correct. The labor market has gotten a little bit better than it was last year, and a lot of companies are now in the phase where not only do they not need new employees, they're starting to let go of employees. All right, let's move on to prediction number 6. This one's regarding speculation in the market. Prediction number 6. This one may surprise you. I've thought about this one for a while, and I've actually changed my opinion on it. I believe that in 2022, the issue with meme stocks and extreme speculation, things like GameStop, AMC, Floki Inu, all the different crypto coins that are completely worthless, I think all of that stuff in general will become a growing issue. It'll get worse, not better. I think that 2022, we're going to have more of it. It's going to become more present in social media. There'll be more money flowing into it. And speculation will get worse and worse, and I don't think the Fed interest rates are going to affect it at all. I think the only chance of it getting better and less people doing this is a deep recession. I think that's the one thing that could really crack it. But I think that overall in 2022, despite interest rates likely going up, I think meme stocks and speculation is going to be a worse issue, not a better one. Now, this prediction is more difficult to gauge if it was accurate in a very objective way. There's no real measurement here. But in my opinion, I think it's mostly correct. I think we had a lot of speculation this year, but I also start to see that it's going away. I think speculation, in my experience, from what I see, is starting to trim down a little bit. Investors are starting to be more conservative. Investors are going to cash flow paying dividend stocks, not so much the software companies that are unprofitable. So even though there has been a lot of speculation earlier this year, I'm starting to see things change and people become less speculative overall. Now moving on, we have prediction number 7. This one's regarding EVs. Prediction number 7, in 2022, EV companies, automakers, I think across the board, most of them in aggregate will come down in valuation. I think there's way too much money and excitement and enthusiasm priced into all these companies. And this isn't any company in particular, but we can go through a couple of them. Tesla's at $1 trillion market cap. It may be justified. Tesla probably has a bright future, but this is a pretty good run. It's above $1 trillion market cap. Then we have Rivian at a $92 billion market cap without making hardly any vehicles. This is one example of a company that I think there's so much excitement and enthusiasm priced into this stock. We have Ford at an $82 billion market cap. This is one of the highest points Ford has ever been in its entire history. The only time was in 1999. They're like the only car maker at that time. We have GM at an $83 billion market cap. It's never traded this high before. Moving on, we have Lucid, another huge market cap EV company, trading at a $60 billion market cap. It's another really big one. Then we have NIO trading at a $47 billion market cap. This one's came down a little bit. So overall, these companies are priced with a ton of enthusiasm. They have very high market caps, and all of it is based on future potential and future sales. And I think in general, not all of these are going to be big winners, and the majority of them will come back to earth with their valuations. All right, so my prediction is that automakers and EV companies will come down in valuation. Here's what Tesla's chart looks like. It's down 56% year to date. NIO is down 62% year to date. Rivian's down 73% year to date. That one's down quite a bit. Ford is down 40% year to date, and GM is down 38% year to date. I think it's safe to say that I got this one correct. Automakers, EV companies did come down in valuation substantially. Moving on to number 8, we have a prediction on the Chinese stock market. Prediction number 8, in 2022, the Chinese stock market will outperform the US market. And this is mostly based on the fact that while the US market continues to go upwards every single day and valuations get more and more stretched by US firms, Chinese companies have had just the opposite effect. They're still growing, they're still doing okay fundamentally, but their valuations have been chopped in half. This prediction is pretty simple. I think the Chinese stock market will outperform the US market because of valuations. And this prediction is incorrect. The US market's down 17%, that's the S&P 500, while the China market cap weighted ETF is down 24%. So it is doing worse than the US market. And what I think has thrown off this prediction is the fact that the Chinese government has been so reluctant to loosen the COVID restrictions. We're just now starting to hear news that they plan on doing that. But here we are in December, so it's a little too late for this year. So this is one that I got wrong. Now moving on to number 9, we have a prediction about Apple. In 2022, Apple will release an AR or a VR headset. And the reason I believe this is because we know that Apple's working on this. They're hiring away employees that are for AR or VR application, and they're looking at Facebook, or Meta rather, running away with this hardware product. And Apple needs to be competitive in hardware if they want to keep their same market share. So I got this one wrong. Apple hasn't released any headset. We still know that Apple's working on a headset. It's something in progress, but in typical Apple fashion, they're very slow to release things. They only release them if they really feel sure about the product, and it looks like it's delayed until at least next year, and it may be delayed even further. So who knows at this point? But no headset in 2022. Moving on to the final prediction. This is number 10. This one's regarding Google. Prediction number 10. In 2022, YouTube Premium will have over 100 million subscribers. All right, so this one's pretty simple. I'm just predicting that YouTube Premium, which has the YouTube Music and then the ad-free version of YouTube, I'm predicting it's going to grow double in 2022. So it was at 50 million, and I think it was going to get to 100 million by the end of the year. Now, this one is a little bit more difficult to judge as well. So far, they're at 80 million, but this isn't counting the last 3 months of the year. I think they could get another 20 million by the end of the year. Unfortunately, we're not going to know the full numbers until their next earnings report early next year. So right now, we don't know, but in my opinion, this one's a pretty close prediction. They went from 50 to 80 million, and I think this end of the year season probably has a lot of conversions. Would not surprise me to get 95 to 100 plus million. So as of right now, this one is a strong maybe. So if you're keeping track of the record overall, COVID will end, correct. Restaurants will have record sales, correct. Software companies would have a bounce back, incorrect. Netflix will be the leader and it will convince people of its leadership. I rate this one as half true. The labor market will ease up. I think that one's correct. Speculation would abound. I think that one is mostly correct. And then EVs and car companies would do terribly. That one was correct. Chinese market would do better than the US. That one is incorrect. Apple would release a VR headset. That one's incorrect. And then Google Music would surpass 100 million subscribers. That one's a maybe. So overall, we have 6 correct, 2 incorrect, and 2 that are either half true or maybes. I think overall, that's pretty good. I feel fine with these results. So that's the video for today. Maybe I'll do another prediction video like this in the future. If you want me to, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.